So we're through Prescott. I knew that would go quick, and just in case this becomes 2 videos, I'm Mike Waddups, and we just went through Prescott, Arizona, and we're coming up on what's called the Granite Dells. Now you'll understand why that's called that when you see it, so I'm not going to try and explain it to you now. But where we're headed this is US 89, and where we're headed is US 89A, the alternate. And we'll see that up here in just a ways. Now I will be honest with you, it's been a long time since I've been around here, and it's changed a lot. This whole business of house on top of that hill and the big waterfalls and all that, nope. To me, that's very new. I don't know how long they've been there. I'm guessing years and years, a couple of decades at least. But that's the first time I've seen those waterfalls. But that's okay. You know, all those people up there on that hill have an amazing view. I'll tell you that. And so we're headed up right now, 89 regular. And right around the corner here, you can see there's some cars parked and that kind of thing. Well, that's, if I remember right, that's Granite Dells Lake. Yep, see, there's the water. Now, you can see it's pretty dry down at this end, but it's still got water in it. And notice all the granite. Thus the name Granite Dells. Now, you can go back in there and hike. And it looks like, because of the amount of water in the lake, that's about all you could do, because there's not a lot of water in that lake from what I remember. But yeah, you can go back in there and hike, do some boulder climbing or rock climbing. And they have camping. I guess the real name of that lake is Watson Lake. And this is why they call it Granite Dells. All of this volcanic granite, you can drive back up in there. It's amazing. It's really, truly amazing. You can see the roads. There's Granite Dells Road right there. And drive up in there, and like you're back in prehistoric times. You expect to see dinosaurs walking through there. Or maybe if you've seen some of the old Star Trek movies, maybe Captain Kirk or Mr. Spock will show up. It's pretty amazing, actually. Yeah, I used to live here. We'll talk more about to start in a minute, but I lived in Prescott. I graduated from Yavapai Community College there with a degree in electronics and an emergency medical technician's certificate. And that's how I got to become an ambulance attendant in Prescott for 2.5 to 3 years. Then I got a job with Texas Instruments, and we moved away from Arizona. That was the second time we moved away. We moved away 4 times, me and my wife and our then kids. I have 2 boys. My wife passed away 2.5 years ago now. This is only about the 2nd or 3rd time I've been back up here. Kind of touches some really old memories, because we lived back here. We lived here back in the, let's see, late 70s, early 80s. And all this out here was cattle ground. No houses, no buildings. There were fences, but this was all cattle. There was one thing out here. Guy had an armory out here. He built custom rifles right out here somewhere. I'm not sure where that was. But it was right around here somewhere. Oops. Don't miss the roads. and around the traffic circle. Yay! Pippin Museum's been around a while, but that's new. That's not where it was. Supposed to be a pretty good. That's the ranch right there. That where the armory was, where the guy built custom rifles. I'm going to have to stop right up here. Yep, there's a McDonald's, so there's food. I'm guessing there's a gas station too. So I'm going to stop right up here, take a pause from this recording, and come back to you later. But enjoy the view till I turn the camera off. 89A alternate, that's where I wanted to go, because as you can see those mountains ahead, 89A goes over those mountains into, well, there's a couple of towns, Jerome, Clarksdale, and Cottonwood. I'm headed for Clarksdale. I believe it's Clarksdale. But right now I'm looking for that McDonald's and a gas station, mostly a gas station. So I'm going to pull off here. Supposedly there's a gas station. That's a good thing. Actually, that's the best thing. And there's something to eat. So that'll work too. And then we'll head up on the road and go over the hill to Jerome. So I'll get back with you as soon as I can. So, I'm back. Motorcycle and I are gassed up, so that's a good thing. And so let me explain where we're going. Now, on a previous recording, I talked about going up past Wickenburg into Prescott. And hopefully you took a look at that, because this is a continuation of that. I'm north of Prescott right now. I had to stop and get gas and get something to eat. And where we're headed is over those mountains you see ahead of us. The tallest one there, the one just to the left, that's Mingus Mountain. And we're going over that. Now, how come I know about this? Well, I used to live in Prescott. Actually, I lived outside of Prescott first. There's a place, if you can't see it from here, but if you look straight ahead, you'll see a kind of a brown hill that peaks, and then some dark mountains behind it. Just behind that peak is well, I guess a set of buildings is what you call it now. Today, now, it's a home for wayward girls. I don't know what else to call it. It's a school for wayward girls. But back in the early 70s, that place was built by my father-in-law. Now, the reason he built it, he was absolutely convinced the world was going to end. He had been convinced the world was going to end all his life, and all his life he was terribly disappointed when it never ended. It just kept on trucking along. So he set a new date for when it was going to end. But anyway, back in the 70s and 80s, the world was going to end. So my father-in-law went looking for a safe place that no one would know about, that he could hide in while the world ended. I didn't have, no one could explain to me, including him, and he would never try to explain how, if the world was going to end, he was going to survive sitting up on a mountain all by himself or with his family. But I guess that really didn't matter to him, because he just, you know, he was going to survive. That's what it was. So he built this place, and the place was a beautiful main house, and then there was a second house for a caretaker. Now at the time I had just married his daughter. We'd been married probably less than 2 years, and he asked me if I would be the caretaker, if I would move up to Prescott and take care of the place. I talked it over with my wife, Barbara, and we decided, yeah, it sounds like a good idea. We were having not so much fun in Phoenix. So we said yes, and we moved up into this place. Now, as we go up past and head up those mountains, I'll try and show you the place. I'll do the best I can. But anyway, we took the opportunity while we were staying up on the side of the mountain to go to school in Prescott. And I graduated with an electronics degree and an emergency medical technician certificate. And I made good friends with the guy that owned one of the ambulance companies in Prescott. So when I graduated, he hired me as an EMT, as an emergency medical technician. Started out as a medic on the ambulance, but eventually I was driving the ambulance. I became one of the drivers. And we did that for about 3 years, until I landed a job as an electronics technician with Texas Instruments. And that was okay with the ambulance owner, because he was selling the ambulance anyway. He decided he was going to become a sheriff in Maricopa County, a deputy sheriff in Maricopa County. So he was selling the ambulance, and he was just thrilled to death that I had gotten a job with Texas Instruments. So we were all very happy and quite pleased with the way things had turned out. But anyway, back on this living in Prescott. When we lived up here on the mountain, we had to boat on the other side of Mingus Mountain. We had to boat in a little town called Jerome. So we had to go over the mountain to boat. Just the way the boundaries were laid out. I had a motorcycle at the time. It was a Suzuki Titan 500 two-stroke twin. So whenever we had to go over the mountain to boat, we would take the motorcycle. Now, once you see this road, you'll understand why we took the motorcycle as opposed to taking a car. Although one time we did take a car. Anyway, so we would take the motorcycle, and I don't remember if it was the first time, but it was at least the second time we went over the mountain. I noticed that on the way down the mountain, I wasn't really using the accelerator. I'd leave it in gear, the engine running, but we just coast down the mountain. We literally wouldn't use hardly any gas at all to get to the bottom of the mountain. So one time, we're coming back over the mountain, coming onto this side. My wife Barbara is on the back, and we reached the top of the mountain, and I shifted into neutral and turned off the motor. It's very quiet. She gets in a little bit of a panic and asks me what's wrong. I said, nothing. She said, what do you mean nothing? The motor's not running. I said, I know. We're going to coast down the mountain. We don't need the motor running to go down this mountain. We can coast down. Well, she was in kind of a panic all the way down because the motor wasn't running. But when we reached the bottom, I turned the key back on, shifted into second gear, and used the coasting speed to start the motor, and we went on back to what everybody called the ranch. And since that time, every time we went over that mountain, I would turn the motor off and coast down either side until we finally moved into Prescott and could vote in Prescott instead of having to go over the mountain to Jerome. So as we get up here closer, I think I'll be able to show you the ranch. It's not really a ranch. It was actually a couple of mining claims that was joined together into about a 10-acre plot. And the guy just dug the side of a hill out to make a level space to build the two houses. It had no electricity other than a generator. The water came from a well. We had a 500-gallon gas tank and a 1,000-gallon propane tank. We were completely off grid. And Barb and I stayed up there all the time for almost 2 years. Her family, his father and wife and brothers would come up for a week about 3 times a year. And that's all. Maybe once in a while her mother would come up because she felt bad that we were up here all alone. I don't know why, but she would come up. One time one of my brothers came up because he wanted us to take care of 3 calves that he had bought. He needed a place to keep them in the spring and summer so they weren't in the Arizona heat. So we built kind of a pasture land and kept the calves for him all summer long. And I taught Barb how to bottle feed plumb calves and give them their shots. And of course she turned them into pets, which was bad because my brother showed up the end of the year to take the calves back to sell them. He offered us some of the meat. I was going to say yes, and Barb said no, absolutely not. She wasn't going to have any of that meat because she knew where it came from. You know, city person. Now you can see a lot of houses have been built up there since my father's, but that's my father's way over there. That white building that you see between the trees, that's the one he built, and that's where we lived. The road that we would get there to is coming up here, not this one, but over the cattle guard there's another road up here, and it follows the power lines. And you'd follow the power lines back to get to where we were living. And we were living literally in the forest. It was just us. Nobody else was up here at the time. And that's the road you would take to it, right there. Now, we're going to go up Mingus Mountain. We're not going to race. I don't race up these things. I like driving on them, the mountain roads, I really do. But I'm not going to worry about how fast it takes us to get over them. And we're not that far away from where I'm actually going. I think it's about 30 miles from here, maybe 25. But it's literally up, over, and down this mountain. So what we're doing right now is climbing up Mingus Mountain. Remember I told you one time we took a car over this mountain to vote. We owned a little Opel Manta. I dearly loved that car. Mostly because I could work on it. It was a very simple car, automatic transmission, so my wife could drive it. And little 4-cylinder engine, simple as could be, carbureted, you know, really just a very simple car. And I had put a CB radio in. It was back in the day when everybody had CB radios. So I had put a CB radio in it, and we were climbing this mountain just like I'm doing now, probably going a little slower because it was a car and not a motorcycle. And all of a sudden the CB comes alive, and I hear these two guys. I think they were in pickup trucks, or a pickup truck and a Jeep or something like that. Anyway, you don't see 18-wheelers on this road for the reason that it's a mountain road. It's twisty, switchbacks kind of road, and they just don't drive it. You know, they don't do well on it, so they don't ride on it. So anyway, these two guys are talking back and forth about different subjects on the CB radio, and Barb and I are just listening, and all of a sudden one of them says, "Hey, you should see the car behind me with the beautiful seat cover." And I laughed, and my wife Barbara looked at me like, what's so funny? I said, "No, nothing, don't worry about it." And so the other guy comes back and says, "What do you mean?" And the first guy says, "Well, this little car behind me has the most beautiful seat cover I've ever seen." And I laughed again, and Barbara started to get peeved at me because, you know, I'd snicker and laugh at it. And finally I said, "Well, Barbara, they're talking about you." She said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "When two people talk in different cars about a seat cover, they're not talking about the seat cover. They're talking about the woman sitting in the seat." She got all embarrassed. And she turned really red. And I picked up the mic and they took a break. You know, there was this moment. They took a break, and I keyed the mic and said, "Hey, I appreciate it, but please don't talk about my wife that way." And Barb, I thought she was going to melt into the seat. And the guy in front of me said, "Hey man, I'm really sorry, but I'm telling you, you have one beautiful lady." And I thanked him, and that was the last thing I said to him. And they didn't talk about her anymore after that, but she was just so embarrassed. I had to agree with him. She was a truly beautiful woman. So anyway, this is Mingus Mountain. This is the road over Mingus Mountain. Now we're still going up. When we go down the other side, we'll come to a little town called Jerome, about halfway down. I'll tell you more about that when we get there. I got to kind of concentrate and make sure we do this right, because as you can see, every once in a while it's just a turn, and then every third or fourth turn is a switchback. So you got to kind of pay attention to what you're doing. I used to love coming up this road. I liked it even better when I came with my wife. I miss her. We were married for 47 years. We knew each other for 50. We both moved to Phoenix at the same time in 1968. I was 2 years older than she was. And funny story, we met when I was my best friend's wingman going to a Catholic church because my brother had told him he would introduce him, his name was Ray, had told Ray he would introduce him to some high school girls that he was going to church with. My brother never went to church, but there were these girls, so, you know, I guess that's the second best reason on earth to go to church. Ray asked me to go with him, be his wingman, and I said, what are you talking about? You're not Catholic. He said, and then he told me about the girls. I said, oh, okay. Well, Barbara decided she didn't want to be with Ray, but she wanted to be with me, which was a little a little disconcerting for me at first because I didn't want to upset Ray. But Ray is the one who told me, "Now don't worry about it. She doesn't want to be with me, and that's okay. She wants to be with you." So 2.5 years later, we're getting married. Ray pulls me aside at the wedding before we're married and says, "I need to apologize to you." I said, "What are you talking about? Why apologize?" He said, "If I'd known what was going to happen when you started going out with Barb, I'd have told you to stay away from her completely because it would have upset me wholeheartedly. I never thought you two would get married." I told him back, I said, "It's the best thing you ever did for me. You'll be my best friend forever for telling me not to miss out on going out with Barbara." So this is the top of Mingus Mountain. It's there's a campground. There's a couple of campgrounds up here. There used to be a little store. I called it a hunter's store. But I think that's closed down. So there's a couple of campgrounds up here, and the temperature is beautiful. I think it's about 76 degrees up here. Right now in Phoenix, it's probably about 107. Down in Prescott, it's probably 85, 86. Up here, it's about 74.